theme permeating this body of text is the relationship between religion and science, particularly regarding the topic of evolution. Many religious groups embrace different forms of theistic evolution or evolutionary creation. The concept of theistic evolution posits that a divine power is the architect of the universe and all life therein, with evolution being the mechanism employed by this divine entity to kindle human life. This viewpoint sees no contradiction between religious doctrine and scientific theories of evolution. Buddhists are the most embracing of this concept among all religious groups listed on the data chart as per the information given. Theistic evolution is also the prevailing teaching in most mainline Protestant seminaries and forms the official stance of the Catholic Church, as noted by Eugenie Scott from the U.S. National Center for Science Education. According to the American Scientific Affiliation, a Christian consortium of scientists, theistic evolution suggests that God designed a universe that holds the potential for spontaneous evolution in all forms: astronomical, geological, chemical, and biological. This view, sometimes referred to as Christian Darwinism, receives widespread acceptance in major Christian churches such as the Catholic Church, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, Episcopal Church, and some other mainstream Protestant denominations. The idea also holds significant popularity among non-literalist Jewish sects and other religions that don't adhere to a literalist interpretation of Scripture. Prominent biblical literalists such as theologian B.B. Warfield and evangelist Billy Graham have either accepted or shown an openness to this viewpoint. Interestingly, a 2007 survey indicated higher acceptance of this idea among American Buddhists, Hindus, and Jews compared to Christian groups. The examination by physicist Max Tegmark on how various U.S. faith communities perceive origin science, particularly evolution and the Big Bang Theory, revealed that despite Gallup's report indicating that 46 of Americans believe in creationism, only 11 belong to religions that openly reject evolution. Supporters of this approach commonly interpret scriptural creation stories allegorically, resolving any apparent discord between religion and science. Hence, they refute the conflict thesis, a belief in an inherent clash between religious and scientific viewpoint. This passage focuses on bridging the gaps between the theological interpretation of creation and the scientific theory of evolution. Augustine initially advocates for an allegorical interpretation of Genesis 1, viewing terms like light, day, and morning as bearing spiritual rather than physical significance, and arguing that such spiritual mornings carry an equivalent reality to their physical counterparts. Contrarily, later in his work, he states some believe that God only created the world, with everything else forming from his prescriptions and command, implying a shift towards literal interpretation. Prominent Jewish examples of this concept come from the works of Philo of Alexandria, Maimonides, and Gersonides. Theistic evolutionists, however, claim Genesis should not be treated as a scientific discourse, but rather as education in faith, arguing that creation is a continuous process, initiated in Genesis, that is ongoing to this day. They maintain that the science of evolution is a chapter in the ongoing narrative of creation, creatio continua. Religious organizations sit across a broad spectrum of acceptance regarding evolution, shaping their theological understanding to various degrees. Meanwhile, individuals or movements within these groups might reject evolution outright, and perceptions have arguably evolved over time. The overall acceptance of evolution fluctuates across different countries, with the United States showing a lesser acceptance rate than Europe or Japan, with only Turkey showing lower acceptance in the 34 countries assessed. Buddhism, generally, embraces modern scientific theories on evolution and universe formation. This can stem from either indifference or referencing the Agana Sutta, where it's believed Buddha's conversation with the monk Vasetha covers evolutionary concepts. The dialogue was intended to convey that social classification doesn't equate to superiority, a theme that embodies the teachings of Buddha. The unfolding theological and scientific narratives remind us of the complex interactions between faith and reason. During the primordial age, Vasetha, all was shrouded in watery darkness, devoid of celestial bodies or divisions of time. There were no genders, for all beings were simply recognized as life forms. At some juncture, after an extensive span of time, delectable earth spread over these waters, reminiscent of frothy skin forming on cooling milk. It possessed color, aroma, and flavor, reminiscent of ghee or butter, and was sweet as wild honey. Buddhism is congruous with the concept of evolution, as scientific discoveries do not controvert any fundamental Buddhist principles. Consequently, most Buddhists implicitly subscribe to the theory of evolution. Questions pertaining to the infinite nature of the universe are considered among the 14 unanswerable inquiries that Buddha claimed were futile to ponder and conferred no aid in alleviating suffering. In his book, The Universe in a Single Atom, The Convergence of Science and Spirituality, Dalai Lama erases the randomness inherent in the evolution theory based on natural selection. Donald S. Lopez, a distinguished scholar of Buddhist and Tibetan studies, in his treatise Buddhism and Science, A Guide for the Perplexed, elucidates that the Buddhist philosophy of rebirth is dictated by karma, which resonates with Lama's viewpoint. Albert Lowe, a Zen master, detracts from both neo-Darwinism and creationism in his book The Origin of Human Nature. A Zen Buddhist looks at evolution, advocating instead for spiritual evolution. Anagarika Dharmapala, a Buddhist writer, even opined that Buddha himself taught the theory of evolution. However, Buddhism also encourages ambivalence towards knowledge of life's origins, symbolized by the parable of the arrow. The essence of this parable is that the inquisitiveness about the shooter's identity or the type of the arrow is as irrelevant to the victim's survival as questions concerning origin of universe are to the goal of Buddhism. Combating suffering. Professor Stephen T. Asma notes that Buddha was primarily reticent about discussions on cosmic origins. Evolutionary theory is often viewed as contradictory to the literal interpretation of the biblical book of Genesis. Despite this, many Christian denominations, including Catholicism and most modern Protestant sects, do not demand a literal adherence to the Genesis creation account. Indeed, metaphorical interpretations have been considered for centuries, predating both theories of evolution and geology. Uniformitarianism. A significant example arises with 4th century theologian St. Augustine, who suggested that God created the universe in an instantaneous act, not over 6 days as per a straightforward reading of Genesis. In his book, De Genesi ad Litteram, on the literal meaning of Genesis, he contends that the biblical days of creation are distinct from common everyday 24-hour periods. According to him, God created everything potentially, with different forms emerging over time. The earth slowly filled with various creatures, each materializing at an appropriate time. This view was furthered by later theologian Thomas Aquinas, who echoed Augustine's notion of an instantaneous potential creation, explaining both flora and fauna came about as needed, for the sake of world structuring rather than any weakness on God's part. Modern theology, represented by figures like Meredith G. Klein and Henri Blocher, supports what has come to be known as the literary framework interpretation of Genesis days. The majority of mainstream Protestant denominations uphold or accept theistic evolution, which is a belief in the compatibility of faith and science. This is demonstrated with Evolution Sunday, celebrated on Charles Darwin's birth anniversary in multiple Christian congregations, reinforcing the message that faith and evolution are not mutually exclusive. Additionally, the National Council of Churches United States endorses this harmonious worldview by providing teaching materials promoting acceptance of science as a vehicle to appreciate divine creation's complexity and beauty. Similarly, the Episcopal Church maintains that Genesis should not be viewed as a scientific or historical account of creation, but rather a proclamation of foundational theological truths about creation-specific denominational positions are discussed further below. The narrative suggests that both religious and scientific viewpoints can coexist harmoniously, particularly in relation to the concept of evolution. Emphasizing the importance of respecting both viewpoints, it is suggested that schools should not teach creationism exclusively. This perspective is supported by the United Methodist Church, which promotes an understanding of God as the creator and encourages the scientific exploration of evolution, whilst understanding each discipline's limitations. Illustrating this, the Church of the Nazarene, an evangelical Christian denomination, respects both divine revelation and scientific inquiry equally. While they uphold God as the sole creator, they provide scope for interpretation regarding the method of creation. Notably, Nazarene scholars like Richard G. Colling, Darrell R. Falk, Carl Giberson, and several theologians have produced works promoting the potential for cooperation between science and religion, while also acknowledging the existing tensions. The Nazarene Manual, a guideline document for the Church's members, stresses belief in the biblical account of creation, but also accepts scientifically provable discoveries in fields such as geology, as they continue to affirm God as the creator. Further illustrating the diversity within religious perspectives, the Eastern Orthodox Church is categorized into compatibilists and dualists. Compatibilists uphold that evolutionary science and theology are compatible, arguing that contradictions arising between these disciplines must be mere misinterpretations, given that God is the source of both divine revelation, Christian faith, and natural revelation, science. This narrative certainly promotes a harmonious coexistence between religious faith and scientific exploration, particularly in the context of understanding evolution. Suv Bufeyev is an advocate of dualism, viewing spirituality as superior to mechanical, physico, chemical, or biological facets of life. He asserts that the divergence between spiritual and scientific perspectives arises from the strictly naturalistic approach employed by evolutionists. The Roman Catholic Church's stance on the theory of evolution has evolved during the past 200 years. Initially, the Church avoided commenting on the issue. In the 1950s, however, it adopted a neutral stance, and in recent years, it has cautiously accepted the theory. Despite this, the Church rejects the materialistic and reductionist philosophies underpinning evolution and insists on the divine creation of the human soul and the concept of a common ancestry for all humanity. The Church doesn't engage in debates about scientific topics such as Earth's age or the fossil record, instead choosing to recognize these subjects as falling beyond its purview. Noteworthy figures within the Church, including Pope Pius XI and Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, have acknowledged scientific findings on life's gradual emergence. The theory of the universe's expansion, inaccurately attributed to Edwin Hubble, was proposed by the Belgian priest Georges Lemaitre, an astronomer and physics professor at the Catholic University of Louvain. The Church today supports theistic evolution or evolutionary creation, believing in no inherent conflict between Christianity and evolution. Deism, grounded in reason rather than faith or revelation, centers on the belief in a divine creator initiating a universe in which evolution could occur. Deists argue that a deity would logically design an autonomous system and its corresponding natural laws, then allow life to evolve and adapt to changing environments rather than constantly intervening. The philosophical perspectives within Hinduism embrace a diverse array of viewpoints regarding the concepts of evolution, creationism, and the origins of life. These ideologies center around the narratives of the universe's inception. Traditionally, these stories revolve around the deity Brahma, who forms a divine trinity with Vishnu and Shiva, with each playing distinct roles as propagators, preservers, and destroyers of life within the universe. Hindu ideologies do not always interpret these Genesis legends literally. The vagueness in the details of creation myths provide opportunities for syncing certain elements with evolutionary theories. This adaptability in Hinduism is evidenced in the Vedas, where some Hindus discover endorsements or precursors to evolutionary hypotheses. Notable science communicators Carl Sagan and Fritjof Capra have highlighted parallels between contemporary astronomical estimations of the universe's age and the Hindu conception of a day and night of Brahma. This concurrence proposes a universe perpetually undergoing birth, death, and rebirth cycle, mirroring divine conception rather than strictly adhering to an evolutionary interpretation. Sagan lauds Hinduism as the only major religion synchronizing its temporal concept with those of current scientific cosmology, spanning from the ordinary day-night cycle to a Brahma's day and night, extending up to 864 billion years. Capra, in his acclaimed work The Tao of Physics, complements the likeness of the Hinduistic cyclical universe, seamless with its organic momentum, to modern cosmological hypotheses. Furthermore, British evolutionary biologist J.B.S. Haldane acknowledged the resemblance of Vishnu's Dasavataras, or the 10 main incarnations of Lord Vishnu. With the chronological progression of evolution on Earth, this parallel suggests that Hinduism echoes biological evolution theory. For instance, Lord Rama, Krishna, and Buddha being the 7th, 8th, and 9th incarnations of Vishnu, respectively, symbolizes the physical and psychological metamorphoses in humans since their emergence. This paragraph focuses on theistic evolution, which is the belief in the compatibility of religious teachings with the scientific theory of evolution, and the varying views across different religions and their sects. The narrative starts by challenging the belief in mankind's evolution from a non-human species as contradictory to the Quran's teachings of Adam's special creation. It emphasizes the unique origin of humans, underlined by their exclusive capacity for knowledge of the divine. The text then discusses the Ahmadiyya movement, which wholly accepts the concept of guided evolution. The late leader, Mirza Tahir Ahmad, explains the complex process of evolution as a strategic arrangement akin to a game of chess, rather than the randomness associated with a dice game. In American Judaism, the text notes the acceptance of theistic evolution by 3 out of 4 major denominations: Reconstructionist, Reform, and Conservative. It also identifies a split in the Orthodox groups on the same issue, with modern Orthodox groups largely accepting and ultra-Orthodox groups largely opposing the concept. Theistic evolution advocates within Judaism adopt 2 main views, either interpreting the creation account in the Torah as symbolic rather than literal, or viewing the days as not indicative of literal 24-hour period. This is explained by citing examples from Genesis, showing that the order of creation aligns with the scientific understanding of the development of life on Earth. The text also mentions Karaite Judaism, a distinct movement that refuses to accept Talmudic law and leans largely towards theistic evolution. Lastly, it discusses the Samaritans, who generally accept theistic evolution despite their divergence from Israelites and Jewish beliefs. Despite a number of famous evolutionary biologists such as Thomas Huxley, Charles Darwin, and Richard Dawkins identifying as agnostics or atheists, many within the field also embrace various forms of theism. Notably, Alfred Russel Wallace, co-producer of the theory of evolution via natural selection alongside Darwin, was an ardent deist, attributing the formation of life and consciousness to an unseen spiritual realm. Similarly, the American botanist Asa Gray, a devout Presbyterian and a close associate of Darwin, reconciled evolutionary theory with his religious beliefs, advocating the idea of divine design inherent within evolution. Gray's sentiments were echoed by Darwin himself, who saw no contradiction between being a passionate theist and an evolutionist. Another supporter of harmonizing science and religion was the influential computing pioneer, Charles Babbage, who proposed that God could have operated as a sovereign lawgiver, establishing laws that eventually gave rise to species at the right time as opposed to periodically performing discrete miracles. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, a renowned geologist, paleontologist, and a Jesuit priest, made notable contributions to the discourse by integrating the concept of evolution into a revamped comprehension of Christianity. While initially suppressed by the Roman Catholic Church, his work significantly shaped theological instruction in Catholic and mainline Protestant seminaries. Furthermore, both Ronald Fisher and Theodosius Dobzhansky, who were Christians and key contributors to the modern evolutionary synthesis, reconciled their faith with their scientific finding. Dobzhansky in particular made it clear, "I am a creationist and an evolutionist. Evolution is God's, or nature's, method of creation." His view upheld that misinterpreting religious scriptures as scientific textbooks led to unnecessary conflicts between faith and science. Therefore, as Thomas J. Ord aptly put it, the Bible tells us how to find abundant life, not the details of how life became abundant, reflects the shared sentiments of many of these scientists, and provides an apt summary of the story. This narrates the interplay of religious belief and scientific discovery among many prominent evolutionary biologists, highlighting their efforts to intertwine theological understanding with evolutionary theory.